Rapatha, The Final Tale, written and read by Jerry Hart. Prologue. Seemingly surrounded by stars, Rapatha walked up the steep, cobbled path, past the dark shops on either side. The road was so steep, her legs barely managed to get her to the top. When she got there, she saw a maze of paths before her. The town of Lacey was full of magical creatures, and Rapatha worried what she might run into. She was just as worried about what she planned to meet. She'd traveled here to speak with a man who could help her, though she didn't know how anyone could help her with her problem. Hiding from nature demons and a wizard sounded impossible. Pulling her hood and cloak close, she headed down the path and chose an alley to the right. She hoped the tree she'd spoken to had told her true. Rapatha had come across it while running through a forest. She had been running away from the wizard and managed to lose him, but she knew it wouldn't be long before he found her again. When she came across the tree, she feared it would hurt her, but it simply asked her what was wrong. It stood 8 feet tall and blended in with the forest. Rapatha had never seen anything like it before, and marveled at the strange beauty of it. She sat with it at its camp and feasted on deer. After the meal, the tree again asked what was wrong. Rapatha told it some of her story, and the creature scratched its gnarled chin as if deep in thought. Then it told her of Lacey. It was the last haven for magical creatures like itself, one safe from the world of man. "Are there any wizards there?" she asked. "None. The only wizards I know of are the brothers." The tree's voice was so soothing, it nearly lulled Rapatha to sleep after the meal. "The brothers? You mean Rockney and Nauki?" "Are there any other wizards?" the tree asked as it chuckled. "Their father." "But he is a nature demon now, is he not?" Rapatha nodded. "There is another, however. His name is Dargonius." "Dargonius?" Rapatha clutched the necklace beneath her cloak, its green gem glowing. "He is a kind wizard, at times." She couldn't help but smile. "I would hope so. We need a wizard on our side. Who else could protect us from the nature demons?" Rapatha gave him a sharp look. "What do you mean?" she asked. "The nature demons are toying with the natural world for their amusement. They cause the ground to shake, the waters to rise. They abuse their power and must be stopped." Rapatha shook her head. "The old demons weren't evil. They were irresponsible, but they never meant to hurt anyone." The tree laughed. "You sound fond of them." She regained control of her words. "Not at all. In fact, I'm running away from them." "Are you now?" The tree leaned back, studying her. "Why are they after you?" "I can't tell you." She clutched the green gem tighter. "Your secrets are your own, child, but you won't find much sanctuary in these old woods. Lacey is your best chance." "I can hide there." "No, but you can find someone who can hide you. There lives an old man who once helped me. I was running away from something that wanted to kill me, something that is good at finding what it wants. There was only one way to hide." "What would want to kill you?" Rapatha asked, genuinely curious. "You seem so kind." "Well, I speak not the correct words for my situation. The ones after me didn't want to kill me in the true sense, but rather kill my spirit. I am running away from my family." Rapatha gasped. "I understand. I too am running away from my family." "I thought you were running away from a wizard." "Him too." Then I suggest you visit the one I spoke of, in Lacey. He will help you. The town is not far from here." The tree gave her directions, and now she was there. Before she'd left the camp, she turned to her new friend and said, "Are there many talking trees in Lacey?" The tree laughed and said, "I was not always a tree." Then he wandered deep into the woods without another word. Walking through Lacey wasn't like Rapatha expected. The whole town was damp and smelly, as if it rained often. She passed 2 giants, having to step aside to let them by. They were the skinniest giants she'd ever seen, with the palest skin. A smaller giant struggled behind its fellows. It gave Rapatha a grin as it walked by. As soon as it passed, a dark blur clouded her vision. She smelled rancid meat and felt very cold. The blur headed toward the giant, engulfing it. The large creature dropped to the ground, moaning in pain. Rapatha stood there for a moment, frightened by what she saw. She didn't know what the monster was that attacked the giant at first, but she didn't like it one bit. "Get away from him!" she yelled at the creature. The monster, which looked like a hideous ape with wings, looked over its shoulder at her. It smiled, blood coating most of its face. The other giants had rounded a corner and didn't know what was happening. "I said, get away from him!" Rapatha removed her necklace. A sudden wind howled through the alley, striking the monster. It struck one wall and then another, as if the wind were alive and malicious, eager to cause as much pain as possible. The bloodsucker fell to the cobbled stones and hissed at Rapatha, drawing the other giants back into the alley. The vampire fled into the air. Rapatha put the necklace back on and replaced the hood over her reddish-brown hair. The little giant smiled at her again, this time in appreciation, as its fellows carried it away. Rapatha turned and continued on her way. After a moment she reached a lonely little shop nestled between 2 bigger ones. The sign overhead was a faded yellow that read, "The Narrow Shop." This was the place the tree told her about, so she took a breath and walked inside. The shop was indeed narrow. There was barely enough room for 2 people to stand side by side, considering there were shelves lining both walls. They were littered with clothes and scrolls, herbs and dolls. The place was crowded, but cozy. "Welcome to the narrow shop in the land of constant starlight. May I help you?" a voice asked from the other end of the shop, startling Rapatha. She saw a silhouette behind a counter. She slowly walked toward it, trying not to grab her necklace again. The tree had told her about the owner's greediness. She made sure to keep it covered with her cloak as she approached the figure. His features became more pronounced. His skin was pale, his hair short, blonde and styled into spikes by some kind of grease. His eyebrows were very thin. And then there were his eyes, which were the color of limes. "I was told you could help me," she said. "Well, that depends," the man replied in a silky voice. "What do you need help with?" "I need to hide." "Oh, well, that sounds familiar. Did you happen to speak with a tree?" "Yes." She laughed lightly, looking around the tiny shop. "Though I can't imagine a tree walking in here." "He wasn't always a tree, darling." "He told me that. What was he?" "Let's just say he wasn't always a tree. I don't like to tell my client's business, if you understand. He's well hidden from his pursuers, however." "I wish to be similarly hidden," Rapatha said quickly, excited by the thought of escaping her own pursuer. "Of course, my dear. First, you must tell me why you want to hide." The tree hadn't told her this part, and she hoped she wasn't being taken advantage of. She sighed and said, "I wish to hide from my family." "And?" "And a wizard." The man raised a thin eyebrow. "Interesting. There aren't many wizards left. Which one do you wish to hide from?" "Rockney." The owner clapped his pale hands to his face. "He's the nasty one. We all wish to hide from that one. I believe I can help. For the right price." "What do you want?" she asked. "What do you have?" "I have gold." The man shook his head. "I have no need for gold." He casually looked over his shoulder, and Rapatha noticed a shelf of jars filled with golden mist. He looked back to her quickly, as if angry he'd drawn her attention to the jars. "My price is something that can't be measured, something very precious to each customer." Rapatha reached for the necklace. She couldn't help it. The owner laughed. "It's nothing that can be worn, either, I assure you. It's your essence." "My what?" "Your essence. That's what I call your life force." Rapatha had no idea what he was talking about, but it didn't sound good. "How do I give that to you?" The owner laughed. "With a kiss, of course." "You want me to kiss you?" "Well, I don't want you to kiss me, but that's the way the transaction works." "How much of my essence do you take?" "Just a taste. You won't even notice it's gone." Rapatha thought about her situation, about the life she wanted to escape. Giving away a small dose of her life force sounded like a decent trade, as long as it didn't hurt her. "All right," she said. "I'll do it." Rapatha's skin tingled. She recognized that feeling and knew it was bad. The shop's door opened behind her. She leaped behind a rack of coats on one side of the narrow shop. She couldn't see who'd entered, but she knew who it was. "Hello," a voice said. "Welcome," the owner replied. "How may I help you this constant evening?" The figure was still out of view, but Rapatha knew who it was. Only one person made her feel this way. "I'm looking for someone. I was told she was in this beautiful town of yours." "What does she look like? Perhaps I've seen her." The man took a step closer, and Rapatha managed to see his chest. He was wearing a dark blue jacket, the buttons an even darker shade. "She's very beautiful," he replied. "I've seen the women of this town. I'm sure you would remember this one." The owner laughed. "I'll overlook that slight to my cherished home because you happen to be correct. However, I can't say I've met any beautiful women as of late." There was a long silence, and Rapatha realized she was holding her breath. She let it go slowly and took another, breathing in the musty coats behind which she hid. "What's your name, friend?" the visitor asked. "Wes. Yours?" "Rockney." "Pleasure to meet you, Rockney. You wouldn't happen to be the Rockney of the Wizardly Brothers?" A short pause. "Why, yes I am." "And would your brother Nauki happen to be here as well?" "No, I'm alone." "Who is this woman to you?" Wes asked. "The one you seek?" Rockney laughed. "She's a friend." "Oh, come now." Wes sounded delightedly doubtful. "No one comes to Lacey to search for just a friend. She must be more to you. A lover, perhaps?" Rockney stepped closer. Rapatha could see his face now. His cheeks were sunken, his eyes heavily lidded. His long brown hair was slicked back. She used to find him handsome, but now... "She's not my lover," he told Wes. "Are you sure you haven't seen her? It's important that I find her." "Why so?" "You ask a lot of questions for someone who knows nothing of what I seek." Rockne grabbed Wes by the neck and pulled him closer. The action had been so fast, Rapatha felt she would have missed it entirely had she blinked. "I'll give you one last chance to tell me the truth," Rockne whispered. "Have you seen Rapatha?" Rapatha held back a gasp when she noticed the shop owner's nose bleeding. He looked frightened. "I swear I have not seen her," he said hoarsely through Rockne's grip. Rockne held him a few seconds longer, and then let him go. "Thank you for your time, Gelfin." He turned and left. Rapatha waited a moment before retreating from her hiding place. "I apologize for him. Now you see why I wish to hide." Wes wiped the blood from his nose. "Indeed. I can help you. In exchange for that kiss, of course." Rapatha looked at the jars again. "Rockne called you a Gelfin?" "Yes. I've been alive for longer than you can possibly imagine, and plan to keep being so." Rapatha reached for her necklace again before catching herself. "I can't imagine, actually. Have you done anything important with your long life?" "Are you prepared to pay the price or not?" Wes asked with a bit of impatience, ignoring her question. "Yes, I am." "Then kiss me." Rapatha stepped forward and leaned on the counter. She closed her eyes and got closer. She could smell tobacco on his breath, and it wasn't unpleasant. She reached out with her lips. A moment later, her lips met his. And then she found herself breathless. It surely wasn't because she enjoyed the kiss. She felt her life force being drawn out of her, causing her to grow dizzier by the second. She tried to pull away, but Wes held onto her shoulders. Rapatha reached up to his face and scratched his cheek. He finally let her go. When she opened her eyes, even the dim light made her head hurt. She felt close to vomiting. He reached for an empty jar and deposited her force into it. "My, oh my," he said. "You are unlike anyone I've ever met." "Tell me how to hide," she commanded, her breath coming more easily. He placed the jar on the counter between them and reached down for something. When his hand returned, it held a brown bag. "Eat these and you shall be hidden." She took the bag and looked inside. "Beans?" "They're more than beans. Simply swallow them and Rockne will never be able to find you. No one will." Rapatha stared at him, incredulous, but then nodded. "Thank you." When she got to the door, Wes said, "Make sure you're in the water when you swallow the beans." "Why?" "Because the magic works better that way. Goodbye." He took the jar and disappeared to the rear of the shop. Rapatha left and kept an eye out for Rockne. She managed to get to the lake at the edge of the town, took the small green beans from the bag, and swallowed them. They were flavorless. She stood in the water, her cloak billowing around her. The ocean reflected perfectly the bright stars above. The water was cold, but she barely noticed because her stomach rumbled. Something was happening, and it didn't feel pleasant. Suddenly, her hands felt numb. She looked at them and saw they were gray and hard, like rock. "What is happening to me?" she asked herself, frightened by what she saw. The giants wandered along the edge of Lacey. The tiny giant noticed a large rock floating along the surface. For some reason, it looked like the most beautiful rock he'd ever seen, and it appeared to be growing.